just dominating joint practices. They are the kings of the joint practice. And we'll be talking about that here on Bird 365 today. It's me, Jody McDonald, Jeff Kerr, my co-host, and my usual co-host, John McMullen, en route to Florham Park, New Jersey, where he spent the day yesterday, and he will be again today. JK, how are you this morning?
Probably better than Ben DiNucci was on Hard Knocks last night, but I digress.
Haven't seen it. Gonna have to check it out. John McMullen, where are you at right now?
I'm at a hotel, so I'm getting ready to go the 3 or so miles I got to go, which is a lot better than yesterday. Yesterday was a logistical nightmare. But now that's, you learn, we get 1% better every day. Right, Nick Sirianni?
He's buying into that Nick Sirianni line of thinking. All right, so you stayed up, and the Eagles stayed up. Everybody stayed up. You made the trek up. I thought there were going to be people going up and back on the Jersey Turnpike. No, you wanted no part of it, huh?
Well, you can. It's just, you know the New Jersey. You know more than anybody about the New Jersey.
Well, I wanted to share my angst with all you guys. Yeah. I wanted you to go through what I went through for years.
Yeah, it's not pleasant. It's not a pleasant experience. And Jody, you've been doing it for, the pandemic probably helped you out in that.
Oh yeah.
Going back and forth, that is a brutal trek. I have a lot more respect for you today than yesterday, and I had a ton of respect for you yesterday. So think about that.
It would be your first mistake from before yesterday and today and tomorrow as well if you're respecting me. All right, but should we respect the Philadelphia Eagles? Because according to you and a bunch of your cohorts that cover the Eagles on a day-in, day-out basis, they are the kings of the joint practices. Undefeated now, 3-0, got the better of the Patriots twice last week and the Jets yesterday. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to look that up under the standings during the year, are you, John?
No, you're not. I get a kick out because I put that out there. The Eagles are 3-0 in joint practices, and people jump. I said the same thing. You got the people. You bring up 52-0 in the last 6 quarters, and you bring up. It took them 88 minutes to get a third down conversion, and they yell at you. It's preseason. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And then you say, hey, they look really good in joint practices. And that matters. That evidently is very, very big. So it is what it is. Take it for what you want to take it as, grain of salt. We don't know what Robert Saleh is trying to accomplish. We follow the Philadelphia Eagles every day. But what I can tell you is the Eagles look better, significantly better than the Jets. From the defensive perspective, from their defensive perspective, they dominated. Offensively, it was a little bit more even against the Jets defense, but you would have to give the Eagles the advantage, much less of an advantage. The defense, though, was tremendous.
John, I kind of wanted to piggyback off that. From a couple things I read, if this was an actual game, Zach Wilson probably would have been sacked about 6 or 7 times. Can you confirm?
Yeah, he was extremely, extremely uncomfortable. That's how I would describe it. They couldn't get anything going. Javon Hargrave has had a great summer when he's been out there. He's back. That was his best day of the summer. He just wrecked everything the Jets were trying to do. I think it was Feeney, Dan Feeney, Jody. If you want to put the asterisk on somebody to worry about, put it there. But everybody was great. Fletcher was great. Josh Sweat was back. Brandon Graham. That front was just smothering like the heat. It was about 90, 95 out there. So, they were good. And if it were a regular season game, again, you have adjustments. I assume the Jets would then go to max protection, things like that. But they were dominant up front.
Elijah Vera Tucker, I know, didn't practice at all. The Jets' first round draft pick this year. And I know Mekhi Becton left early. They think he's got concussion issues, and that'll be firmed up today. How many actual snaps did he get in? I know the Eagles dominated defensively on the line, but the Jets were down probably their 2 most talented linemen. How much did Becton play?
Yeah, that's part of that context. Yeah, Vera Tucker Becton left pretty early, so not a lot. By the way, he's one of the few people in the world that can rival Jordan Mailata for size. He is massive. And yeah, you're right. He's obviously a big part of their plan and what they do. And that's why, you got to be careful. You got to put all the context you can on these types of situations. But we can only see what we see. And from the players that were out there, the Eagles had an easy time of it. And I will say from the Jets' perspective, Zach Wilson, the one thing, that kid can throw the football, man. I mean, he can sling it. You could see it on one-on-ones. He can get the football anywhere he needs to get it. So from that perspective, that's certainly a positive for the Jets.
Now, Quez Watkins did come back to practice yesterday after his injury. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, John?
Yeah, I think he just got the wind knocked out of him. He made a really nice catch where he pointed the football and came down on his back. I think a lot of people were scared because they saw what happened to Tyree Jackson, who did the same thing, came flat on his back, and obviously had a small fracture in his back, and now he's out for 2 months. So he left the field, but he was back really quickly, and he finished the session. So I think Quez is fine, and just a little bit of a scare.
J-Mac, sticking with the wide receivers, different guys, different reports. Travis Fulgham made some plays, had a drop. How much is this make or break for him? Practice today, game on Friday, cuts next Tuesday. Is Fulgham just playing for being the fifth wide receiver rather than the sixth wide receiver? Or is he actually playing for the sixth or the seventh if the seventh is a guy who's not going to make the team?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's definitely out of the conversation to be a starter. So he's kind of played his way out of a job. I mean, at the start of this, he was supposed to be one of the guys in 11 personnel. I think Quez Watkins has officially beaten him out for that. So then you start talking about if you're going to number him, Greg Ward, because of his veteran status, is probably number 4. And he's fighting with J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and John Hightower to make this football team. And you could tell the shift is they're trying to get these guys snaps on special teams and seeing from that perspective, okay, who can help us the most on special teams? It might not even be who's the best receiver. It might be who can help us the most on special teams, because when you're deep on the roster, you got to help there. And then you say 6, Jody. I think a lot of people say they're keeping 6 receivers, and they probably will. They probably will. But we have to see how this coaching staff kind of lobbies Howie Roseman, and the fact that they don't have a lot of good receivers. They don't have a lot of depth here, and maybe you want to keep players at other positions rather than a 6th receiver that is not going to help you all that much. So I would say, yes, he's fighting for a roster spot. From where he started, that's not a positive sign. But yesterday was his best day in at least 2 weeks. I will say that.
John, I was just about to ask you, are they going to keep 5 or are they going to keep 6? But I'll pivot a little bit here. If they only keep 5, where do you think that extra roster spot will come?
Well, I think you have to look at the depth positions. So offensive line, they might want to keep Brett Toth, for instance. He deserves to make this team. Or Toth, I always say Toth. But, they have a lot of depth at the offensive line. You start piling up the numbers and saying, well, they can't cut Dillard if they don't trade him. Are they going to trade Matt Pryor? You have Nate Herbig. We know you have Jack Driscoll, excuse me. They have a lot of bodies on the offensive line, and I think they want to find a way to keep him. You also have to start talking about Jackson and what they feel from that perspective. Are they going to carry him on the original 53 and then put him on injured reserve, or are they going to shut him down for the year at tight end? That's a decision they have to make. Linebacker, I think, shockingly, is they seem to view that they have more depth than maybe the rest of us thought coming into this. And then corner. You can never have enough corners in this league. You have to keep 6 corners in the modern NFL. You have to. And if you don't, you're playing with fire.
And I want to ask you about the cornerback, but first the linebacker position, because we discussed this on Monday, and none of us put Joe Ostman's name out there as one of the guys the Eagles could consider cutting, because we knew they had to cut one guy to get down to the required number of 80, and then next week it's all the way down to 53. It seems like Joe Ostman's been here for about 10 years. It just seems like every single year he's there. Is he going to make it? He's got a shot. All right, well, it looks like practice squad for Ostman again. He gets cut yesterday, which was kind of harsh. I thought he had played better than being cut at the 80 cutoff, but he does so with an injury designation, which means if no one claims him, which I'll bet that is the case. If somebody claims him, I'll have to eat crow, but I think he's going to get to waivers. So he reverts to the Eagles, and then they get a little bit longer to make a decision on him. It stinks that somebody had to go back down the turnpike yesterday, and it was Joe Ostman, because he's not going to practice today. Kind of came out of left field for me, Johnny Mac. How about you?
No, because it was more, you're right. I mean, he's not one of those guys that deserved from a meritocracy standpoint to go at the 80 cut, but he had a concussion, so he wasn't practicing. It was one of those things when they made the original cut from 90 to 85, it was really about, guys who couldn't give him reps at that particular time more than the Harry Kreiders of the world or that second phase, which were guys that you just know weren't going to make the football team. So part of it was he didn't practice yesterday, wasn't going to practice today. So he wasn't able to give him those reps, and they kind of knew he wasn't going to make the final 53, so they made the move a little bit earlier. And it's one of the difficult parts of the NFL. I mean, he's a guy who's helped. I mean, Jordan Mailata, you talk to Jordan Mailata, I mean, he calls him Smoking Joe. Nobody has, even Jeff Stoutland hasn't contributed more to Jordan Mailata's development as a player than Joe Ostman. Jim Schwartz, even Mike Groh used to talk about Joe helping the offense get better. Just a great practice player, great practice squad player. And the sad thing, he was going to make this team in 2019. He was going to make the team. They were carving out a role for him. They were putting this joker role, stand-up rusher package in for him, and he tore his ACL at one of the open practices at Lincoln Financial Field. And, Joe, as a defensive end, he's very undersized, but he was tremendously quick. He used to give Jordan headaches in one-on-ones. Just beat him like a drum with his quickness. And after that ACL, I don't think he was the same guy from that quickness standpoint. And if you don't stand out when you're that undersized, it's difficult, and it's unfortunate. But yeah, that waived injured indicates basically the Eagles he'll get through waivers, as you said, Jody. He'll go on injury reserve. Then the Eagles will work out an injury settlement, and then he'll be free to sign anywhere after the injury settlement. The Eagles would have to wait 6 weeks if they want to bring him back at some point once the injury settlement ends.
John, I thought Jonathan Gannon gave kind of a smart answer yesterday when you guys asked about Genard Avery or what type of position he was. He goes, Sam linebacker. I'm like, hey, come on, John. He's not a Sam linebacker. Like, what is their role right now?
Well, he is in this defense. But yeah, what people think of a traditional Sam linebacker, I mean, you can see the people they rotated. That's where Joe Ostman was playing. It was Genard Avery. It was Joe Ostman. It was Patrick Johnson. It is Patrick Johnson. These are all edge rushers, basically, in previous lives until the Eagles tried to shift. I can't help thinking that might be Ryan Kerrigan's role when he gets back, when he's healthy, because he's played, 3-4 outside linebacker a lot over the years. So maybe that's the way they go. Otherwise, it's going to be Genard Avery and Patrick Johnson. I would circle that as a potential headache. But I think, people forget that, 4-3 is, we always say, that's no longer a base defense in the NFL. That's the sub package. So your Sam linebacker, in the case of the Eagles, is probably going to play 20-25% of the time. That's it. And the rest of it's going to be nickel or extra defensive backs. That's just the way the NFL is going. So I don't think, number one, it's as important of a position. And number two, I think another outside curveball we might see is if they do value that position. Because if you look at Minnesota values that position. That's a big position in their defense. That's where Anthony Barr plays. If that's their feeling, then you probably start talking about TJ Edwards playing weak side linebacker and Alex Singleton playing that position.
John, you just said it now. You've said it before. Others have said it as well. Could very well be Ryan Kerrigan's position, which we all know Kerrigan, and you're right. He played an outside linebacker in a 3-4. Playing it in a 4-3 is a little bit different. It's not the same exact thing. And I just didn't think Ostman fitted it the way he was asked to play it in the couple of preseason games the Eagles have had so far. Why do we think Kerrigan can do it? He got hurt relatively quickly in camp this year. He's missed a whole bunch of practices. He missed the exhibition games. You just plug him in. He's not going to play tomorrow, on Friday against the Jets, or at least I'm assuming that. If I'm making a mistake, please say so. Just week number one. All right, Ryan, you're up to speed, buddy. Go ahead. Give us some linebacker reps.
Yeah, well, he's one of those guys we talked about a lot. I mean, he's played so much football, they don't think they need to see anything from Ryan Kerrigan. And no, you're right. I would be stunned if he plays against the Jets. I would be stunned if anybody plays against the Jets other than people that have to play, because you have to put out some kind of product. And Nick Sirianni's going to talk before practice today. I don't think he'll say anyway, but I don't feel, especially now that the Eagles have played well again in joint practice, I don't think you're going to see a lot of familiar names other than the fact you only got 80 guys, so some have to play. But Ryan Kerrigan is not in that category because, hey, he's not even healthy. He hasn't been back at practice. And even if he was, he wouldn't be one of those guys. But, yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to what I was kind of saying. If they value the position, if they want to make that a major position like it is in Minnesota where Gannon used to coach, then yeah, it's going to be Ryan Kerrigan or it's going to be Alex Singleton. If they're not, if they're going to just use it as that 20-25% sub package, then I think it's going to be Genard Avery or Patrick Johnson. And I don't think in that case, the latter scenario, it's going to be all that important. I don't think it's going to be a big part of this defense. So it's kind of how, and the one thing they've been consistent about is they're not showing anything offensively or defensively. But I can tell you this, in practice, offensively, you see things you don't see in the games. You see a lot of RPOs. You see a lot of quarterback driven run plays that you don't see in the game. On the defensive side, you don't see an Anthony Barr type presence in that defense. And I'm not talking talent perspective. I'm talking use perspective. So I don't think it's going to be a huge part of Jonathan Gannett's plan.
John, do you feel Howie Roseman and this front office are putting an immense amount of pressure on Nick Sirianni by not playing these guys in preseason games? Because week one, they better not come up, how can I say it, flat the first half, because this is a beatable Atlanta Falcons team.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's an organizational decision. Take that as you will. I think if we're up to Nick Sirianni, the Eagles would be preparing more from both a practice and a preseason playing perspective. They've made a cost-benefit analysis, and I don't necessarily think it's crazy. But I think you should expect some rustiness or hiccups or whatever you want to call it in week one, and probably further early in the season. I think they're going to be playing themselves into regular season sort of performance level. I just don't know. You can talk about all the mental reps you want. It's not the same as live reps. And again, more than likely, and they could change their mind, but I don't think they will. More than likely, the starting quarterback who's had 4 career starts is going to hit week one with 10 preseason reps under his belt. I don't know. You see around the league. I mean, there are certain guys who are putting mothballs, but you've seen Patrick Mahomes out there at times. You've seen even Tom Brady out there in week one. I don't know. I think the preparation part is more important, especially for a younger player, especially for a younger quarterback. Like I say it all the time, and Jody knows, with Fletcher Cox's and Lane Johnson's friend. I don't care. Those guys, I don't care. That's fine. With young players who need to develop, they got to play in the preseason. And the Eagles, by the way, seem to know that at wide receiver, and they're taking a different tact at quarterback, which is the most important position. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me.
They're treating their quarterback like he's a 6-year veteran, which I just don't understand. All right, I want to go to a different position, though, with you, J-Mac, and that's running back. They've used their running backs the way they have in the first 2 preseason games. We'll see about the third. We've seen them in joint practices. We believe that Miles Sanders is going to be the main guy. How much does the main guy get the ball? What's the percentage breakout of touches in a game? Kenny Gainwell seems to be improving his stead every single day. How is it going to be determined? Who is going to be determining it? How many touches these guys get? Is it purely a coaching staff thing? Is Howie Roseman at all going to be involved in this? Once the first game arrives, are the medical people going to be deciding who gets how many touches? How is running backs usage going to be decided week one against Atlanta?
No, I don't. I'm not going to go that far. I think that's a coaching staff decision. And yeah, I mean, Miles Sanders is going to get the vast majority of touches. And obviously that's going to be mainly running the football. They're going to try. I mean, Miles has talent as a receiver in the fact that when he does catch it, he can create a lot of problems. So you also want to get his confidence going from that perspective. You know, if he starts catching a couple swing passes early and he starts feeling it, you know, you want to build on that confidence and try to get him out of this sort of funk he's been in catching the football. But, you know, Nick Sirianni and Jamal Singleton have been very honest about that particular position, probably more than any other position. They've said from pretty early on it's going to be a committee approach for 2 reasons. They just think running backs get too banged up the more touches you give them. And again, Miles Sanders is not Derrick Henry. He's not built for 30 plus touches. If you do that, he's going to get hurt. And then the second part is you got to take advantage of what guys do well. And Miles hasn't caught the football all that well recently, dating back to last season. Not the best pass protector either. So you start talking about third down backs. And Singleton said he's going to piecemeal it together. So generally, the coaching staff will lean on the position coach. In this case, it's the assistant head coach to dole out the playing time. But Miles Sanders is going to be to simplify it, the first and second down running back, and they're probably going to try to get Kenny Gainwell on the field as quickly as possible to be the third down running back. If he's not ready, it'll be Boston Scott, and Jordan Howard will be that sort of short yardage inside the tackles, change of pace runner.
What do you see in Kenny Gainwell that can provide the explosiveness that the Eagles need in this offense?
Well, he catches the football naturally. And I know this offense wants to use sort of that, if you want to go back to Austin Eckler or Naheem Hines, they want to use that type of back who can catch the football, not just out of the backfield, but, split them out. You're going to see 5 wide formations where, one of those 5 wides is going to be the running back split out. And even Miles said, the other day, I think it was Sunday, that Kenny has the most natural hands on the team. So he caught the football a ton at Memphis, the one year he was at Memphis, and he just seems to have a natural ability to do it. And I think the Eagles are envisioning him as that type of player who can be their movable piece. The question is, how quickly can you get him there? Again, we talk about rookies all the time. Now we're talking about rookies who aren't getting a ton of practice time, who aren't getting a ton of preseason reps. Now, Kenny played quite a bit. He's more in the receiver category. He's not in the proven category, so he's playing. But even we talk about the 70, 75-minute practices. I don't know. Is that enough preparation? We'll see.
Well, they went 90 yesterday, and you may be having to work 90 in the heat again today, John. Although it's not as warm out as it was yesterday, but you'll find that out when you get out of the hotel. What are you hearing and or seeing with Rodney McLeod coming off the PUP list? I know all offseason long we've been speculating, hey, he could be ready for week 1. They're hoping that he's ready for week 1. They're crossing their fingers that he's going to be ready for week 1. Well, he hasn't come off the PUP list yet, which means we can't really determine where he's at. He's one of those veteran guys that they may have the good feel on, that they don't think they need to see a lot from him. What's the chance of Rodney McLeod being active and in the starting lineup week 1 against the Falcons?
Yeah, I mean, that was always his goal. So I never expected him to see him in training camp. I think that's one of those things to keep an eye on. Once the cut comes after the Jets game and you get down to 53, you have far more time than you usually do with the changes and the scale back. So I think it's 16 days before week 1 after the final preseason game. So I think you got to keep an eye on, is that when Rodney's activated? That's the indication that he's going to be ready. He's going to be close. They go into preparation mode. I mean, he's always out there. He's always working on the side field. He looks fine. That's one of those injuries that takes 9 months. He got hurt mid-December, and you can do the math. That would be mid-September. So it's right on the cusp. I don't think he's going to be on PUP to start the season because he's not going to miss 6 weeks. The question is, can he be there week 1, or is it going to be week 2, week 3, week 4, early in the season? We're going to see Rodney relatively early in the season.
John, who's been the most disappointing player in this camp? Because I'm assuming today might be the last time like a bunch of media guys will actually be able to see the full majority of practice.
Yeah, it is. This is the last fully open practice of the year. And then you shift back into regular season mode where we get to see about 25 minutes of individual drills and stretching. That's a good question. Most disappointing, I say, well, who played themselves out of a job? There's only one guy that I can think of, and we talked about him before, Travis Fulgham. So that to me has to make him the most disappointing. He started camp as the guy who they wanted to be that third receiver behind Devontae Smith and Jalen Reagor, and he's not that guy anymore. Now he's fighting for a roster spot. So from that perspective, I'm trying to think on the defensive side of the ball, did anybody was supposed to? And no, so he's got to be the most disappointing.
Well, it's funny enough, I was going to go there next anyway, and Jeff just made it kind of easy for me. The only other guy I'd put in the mix, I think Fulgham is the guy. would be Andre Dillard. And I know that I pimped you a lot about Andre because you were one of the last to move off the fact that, hey, he's a first-round pick. They're going to give him every chance. Well, he just got blatantly outplayed by Jordan Mailata, and then he got hurt. But he was back on the field yesterday, John. So I still think there's a chance that they release him. Maybe they go injured designation with him, too, and then bring him back thereafter. But make him available to all teams. I know they get nothing in exchange for a first-round pick a couple of years later, but he hasn't been one of their best 53 guys. If you're just judging by what they've showed in practice, did he show you anything yesterday in his quasi-triumphant return to the Eagles lineup?
Well, he certainly didn't stand out. I saw him get bull rushed at one point, which is a constant. That's kind of been the big problem, but there wasn't anything dramatically terrible. I don't think they're going to release him because they don't have to release him. I think they'll be able to spin him off and trade him, and we'll see. Trades are picking up. Sony Michel got traded. As we cut down, we constantly talk about the offensive line issues around this league. It's not going to be anything great. 7th round pick, conditional 7th round pick, something like that. I just don't see that they would release him. Now the problem with that is, the old adage, what do you want to do? You want to buy low and sell high. You're selling at the lowest point possible. So you might want to stick him on the roster and try to rehabilitate him a little bit. It's a difficult decision. You're right. It's a good one, Jody. He probably doesn't deserve to make this team on a meritocracy. Brett Toth is a guy I mentioned that probably deserves to make this team. He's had a better accounting. He's more versatile. They're cross-training him now. But we talk about pedigree all the time. You know how it works. They're just not going to release him. They're not. I'm very confident in that.
John, you mentioned Sony Michel. He got traded for a 5th and a 6th, which can eventually be a 4th if the Rams get that comp 4th round pick, which it looks like they're going to. So it looks like it's going to be a 4th. Would that be a win for the Eagles if they could somehow get a 4th for Andre Dillard?
Oh my God, that would be parade worthy. At this point, that's what I mean. You're selling low. You're selling at the lowest point possible. So from that perspective, it's not a Howie Roseman type trade, because that's what Howie's good at, creating leverage, creating desperation from the other side. The Michel trade's a good example because the Rams think they're a contender. They need a running back. So they probably gave up more than they typically would for that type of player. Not that it's that much, but and the Rams don't value draft picks probably less than anybody in the NFL also. And by the way, people should take a look at that because the Rams have been pretty successful building a team with more of a tint on veteran players. But yeah, I mean, I don't see any way you can get that much for him at this point. All you've seen written all summer, and people around the league pay attention, is how bad he's been. It's just a really, really bad time to trade Andre Dillard. So I don't know if there's ever going to be a good time, but if we do get to the point where he is released, I don't know if you guys saw the Athletics agent questionnaire they did. Howie's the least trustworthy GM. Howie Roseman is not cutting a 2019 first round pick. Not at this stage.
All right, we shall see. All right, last thing, John, and we'll let you run. There was some good speculation over the last couple of days leading up to yesterday's practice that maybe the Eagles and the Jets could be trade partners. Yeah, most agents don't trust Howie Roseman, but does Joe Douglas trust Howie Roseman, seeing as they worked hand in hand for years here in Philadelphia? The Jets certainly have a need for pass rushing with the fact that Lawson went down with the season-ending injury last week. Any of the Jets pass rushers, we know the Eagles look good, and we're in Wilson's face all day yesterday. Did the Jets get any kind of pass rush, or do they still look like a team that's desperate to get their hands on a pass rusher? And will the conversations between the Eagles and the Jets continue?
Yeah, I didn't see much consistent pass rush. I did see some flushing of Jalen Hurts. The big play to Quez Watkins, he was flushing to his left where Quez got banged up. His worst play was flushing to the right where Nick Sirianni dropped an F-bomb at him, by the way. But I don't know if that's because we constantly talk to Nick about how he should be climbing the pocket and instead of flushing out. And Nick agrees with that. So I don't know how much of that is just a young quarterback who, it's sort of his DNA to get out of the pocket as quickly as possible. I didn't see a ton of pressure. And remember the Eagles offensive line, which is also good. Like that's the strength of their team. That's a tough group to get pressure on to begin with. So I definitely think the Jets can use some help. The question is, Joe Douglas and Howie have a great relationship. They still have a great relationship. Do the Jets want to pay Derek Barnett $10 million? He could certainly help them. And then to the Eagles, the strength of their defense we just talked about is their defensive line. And while people can say Josh Sweat is going to be better, and I agree with that, part of the reason it's their strength is the depth as well, and the fact that they can rotate and they have so many good players. So you're affecting your team from a negative perspective. So it makes some sense from a need for need standpoint, but I'm not sure it makes as much sense from a monetary standpoint.
Jay McMullen, you got to get to facilities. Look forward to getting you back here tomorrow in the side chair next to me. Thanks so much for hopping on today. Stay covered up there on the sideline.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
John McMullen, usual co-host here on Birds 365, but Jeff Kerr doing yeoman's job coming in off the bench for him. Some more things I want to break down with Jeff when we come back. Lots yet to do. Hour number 2, Matt Lombardo, guy a lot of you guys I'm sure recognize, was in town for years covering the Eagles. He's doing giant stuff and across the board in the NFL for FanSided these days. Matt Lombardo will be our guest in hour number 2, but when we come back, Jeff and I continue to break down the Philadelphia Eagles here on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.